Hey guys, this is Michelle, and Chris and I have a little personal message for you. For the past year, you have given us the gift of your time and attention.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd like to do something for all of our loyal listeners, our casual listeners, really anyone. If you're listening right now, I'm going to count you as well. We have a gift. We have some cool stickers that we made. They're the good stuff. We got nice vinyl stickers.
Mm-hmm.
Chris's quality control. He wanted to be sure they were good.
You need to be able to stick it wherever and it lasts.
Exactly. So we went with something really nice, and we would like to give them to you. Of course, I'd also love to see them out in the community. But Chris, talk about how people can get those stickers.
Yeah, real easy. So if you're listening to this right now, if you go to the show notes, there'll be a link right there that says, join the gift exchange. Or you can go to studiostillwater.net, and at the very tippy top of the page, there's a link there to join the gift exchange. You'll fill out your contact information so that we can mail you the stickers. And then you also have an option to join our email newsletter for future communications from Studio Stillwater.
Okay, very good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll mail you these cool stickers. You can stick them wherever you want to stick stickers.
I would love to start seeing them around town.
Mm-hmm. I want to see one on a traffic pole, just random. That's where you put all the cool stickers.
Oh, there you go.
Is in public, but I don't know if that's allowed.
Okay, well, we're not certainly encouraging that, but we're saying if we happen to see one, it'd be super cool. So anyway, thank you so much for your time, and we appreciate it.
Thanks for listening.
In the Newsroom is a production in partnership with Studio Stillwater. Every week, journalists from the Stillwater News Press invite listeners to join us in the newsroom and hear the story behind the stories. Hello and welcome to In the Newsroom. I am editor Bo Simmons. With me today, producer Chris Peters.
Howdy, folks.
City editor Michelle Charles.
Good afternoon.
Senior reporter Ashlynd Huffman.
She got a promotion.
Hey!
What raise did you get?
My self-esteem.
Oh.
She's 2 years. What raise did you get? And she said my self-esteem. And I completely went over my head.
That was a good one.
Snack that one in there.
So you've been looking forward to this work anniversary.
Yes. I don't know why, man. It's just a big accomplishment. I'm excited.
Okay.
Be anywhere for 2 years, I guess, is something.
Yeah,
right?
sticking through the pandemic is the main thing. I made it through the pandemic.
I think considering the last 2 years, anyone who's still employed in the news business probably should be pretty happy.
Yes.
And there was a time when really no one knew what was going to go on, or no one knew what was happening, or who'd still be around. And who knows, I just say we're not out of the pandemic.
We're not.
Has anyone seen the new South Park stuff?
No.
Right.
I know they're doing a whole they're focusing 100% on that, right?
Yeah, and this is a sort of a light spoiler because I think it aired first in November, what they call it post-COVID. So they open on all these sort of newsreel things, the pandemic is over, and then it's sort of it cuts to they're actually 35 years from now.
Oh,
so the idea is
wow.
you're reading a news thing about the end of the pandemic, and it's sometime in the future. So
okay.
Way in the future.
Yeah. So the whole thing takes place pretty much in the future. Yeah.
Okay.
Is it apocalyptic? How many people have not made it?
No, nothing like that. It's still just sort of taking all these shots at the way people are behaving today.
There you go.
But setting it in the future,
Okay.
Interesting.
But,
Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
So, Ashlynd, you made it through the first wave.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I will make it through this one.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the day after the city council, and we pluck a lot of things out of city council. You never know what's going on, but you guys saw across 3 budget items, you saw maybe 3 different stories.
Oh, yes.
Chris, take us through that first one.
Yeah. To cut to the chase, we've learned that a 7-Eleven is going to be built at 711 North Main Street.
How weird is that?
And
We
how-
are so
And
excited.
how did you learn that?
So, when you're looking at the city council's agenda, you'll see request for utility easement, some sort of change. And Michelle, help me out. That usually means like an electrical line needs to be moved somewhere or something for some development.
Right. There's a public utility line of some sort, and they just want to close that easement. It was never used, or they want to clear it out. Yeah, that's usually all it means.
So part of the planning department, Ryan Harkins, was presenting, and usually it's, they show their little map where, okay, here's a polygon of the property, and this is where, it's usually very vague, but then they pulled up an actual blueprints of the layout for what's going there. And so
Like a site plan.
an actual site plan, which was the current location of New China Buffet and Chuck's Paint and another building back behind there. So that corner, Bo's like,
Okay, now,
is
yeah,
that?
I
Yep.
just, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I was
Okay.
So
gonna say we are
something that is 3 separate buildings, 2 parcels right now.
Yes. And so the site plan showed that it was going to be a 7-Eleven convenience store. And it,
It was labeled as a 7-Eleven.
and that was even kind of joked a little bit at the council meeting, was
Right.
it was 7-Eleven located at 7-Eleven North Main Street. So yeah, those 3 parcels are going to become one large parking lot with a 7-Eleven convenience store and gas station in the middle.
Yeah, and now here's the interesting thing to me about that, as someone who's followed city council for years and who knows and is interested in zoning way more than other people, normal people, is that usually when you think that when something like this, there's a big change going on, that it would go before the city council for some kind of approval. But all of these lots are zoned commercial.
right.
So if it's zoned properly for the intended use, it doesn't require any further approval. It's all administrative. It will never be spoken about publicly until you see the sign go up and they say, hey, we're building a 7-Eleven.
Unless
yeah.
you need to do some sort of utility easement or something like
Right.
that requires a vote.
Right. So they weren't required to say anything about it. It's just an interesting thing. And it kind of shows how the process works to me.
Right. You might need certain permits for different things, but
Yeah.
you're not always going to need council approval, just
Which is why
If
you
you're
have to be
already-
so careful when
Right.
you're talking about rezoning something. Because
Yeah.
once it's rezoned, man, it can be used for anything that is allowed under that zoning. And it will not require any further approvals.
So, like,
That's it.
multiple people could try to get on the same property.
Well,
and
what I
zone?
mean is, in the future, say that 7-Eleven deal fell through, they could do anything that's allowed under commercial shopping zoning.
Okay.
So if you have something in your neighborhood that someone wants to rezone commercial shopping, and someone says, oh, I just want to do this thing that's going to cause the least disruption, well, that's great, as long as they really intend to do that, and as long as they maintain ownership of that property and control of that property. But if they ever sell that property, everything's on the table. The most intensive use, the most disruptive use. So you have to think about that. That's why the city council avoids what they call speculative zoning, where you would basically just rezone something with the idea that you're making the property more attractive or more valuable.
Yeah, I think another thing, I don't know if it was on the consent docket or they went through it, because we're trying to sit there and watch the meeting while also working and putting the paper together. And there was a commercial zoning, I think somewhere south of town, like 12th and Husband or Duncan or somewhere, that was requested to be zoned to RSS, residential single family, right? And I was like, where is there commercial general in this area? And I go and look, and it's just an empty square lot surrounded. It's all residential, but at some point it was zoned commercial
Right.
there. And so obviously it makes sense now to make it, be a single family.
Yeah.
But those, listening to some of those details and stuff, sometimes you can learn things you wouldn't otherwise.
That's true. That's why, just tuning into the city council or looking at those, what looks like kind of a very, not super exciting, not super sexy agenda item like a utility easement clearance can yield information. But it's going to be a pretty good size 7-Eleven. There's a lot of parking around it.
I'm excited for that. I love their ices.
There you go.
I just drove by there today, went to the fill up on gas right across the street at Cowboy Corner there. So there's already a gas station, convenience store right there. And that's a huge area.
Yes, it is.
It's really big. When you go and you see those 3 large buildings turn into that, it's a lot of area.
The site plan has a lot of parking around it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what that's going to look like eventually, but yeah. I mean, it's a new business. That's great. Maybe the other convenience stores aren't going to be as happy. We don't know. But once again, talking about this, the city council doesn't get to tell you what you can build in a, in a place that's zoned properly, right? I mean, the Great Chicken Wars were a perfect example of that, because people would say, "Well, why are they letting them build another chicken restaurant?" Well, if you want to squander your life savings putting in the 100th chicken restaurant in this town, the city council cannot stop you as long as the zoning for where you want to build it accommodates that.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the thing. Limited control over that.
And also thinking about the marketplace.
Yeah.
It's also a lesson that buffets still not so hot right now.
Not
right?
doing so well. China really, they never recovered after the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious how buffets out there are faring in other places.
Salad bars are barely a thing.
Man, I miss those.
I miss salad bars.
Yeah, I don't know. It'd be a tough time to get me to go to a buffet today.
I would. I'm sorry. If it was open, I might go.
You would go. Cheap calories.
No, they're just so good.
Anyway, so yeah, changes afoot.
Yeah. So what else you have? How much money's being spent on How much money is being spent on emergency response?
And that was another surprise where we go through and we're reading okay, they're gonna, we also got body cameras for the police coming, and we kind of heard that was on the way, $300,000 roughly, something around there, and then new public radio safety, $6.7 million. Oh, that one pops out.
Yeah, it's really almost 6.8. It's like 6.775 million. So, basically what that is a whole new communications system. It's going to replace the current towers. It's going to do everything. And the reason for this, which is super interesting, is there are a bunch of dead spots in our city. When you have a big metal building or a big concrete building, or you're down in a basement, or you're more than 2 stories above the ground, or there are so many things, or in a stairwell, or in all these things, you can't get radio communication. And there is at least one place, I think I know where it is, but I'm not going to say it, that was just described as a large building that we go to a lot.
And that is that when the police or fire enter that building, their radios
do not work. Do not work. Which means that the only way they can get help, the only way they can communicate with other emergency responders is to use their cell phone. So this new system is supposed to correct a lot of this, take care of a lot of those dead spots. It's not going to take care of all of them. It's going to require some extra planning to do some of that. But yeah, 6.7 million. Now, originally this was envisioned. The really interesting thing is they were looking at this as an integrated system that would cover all of Payne County. And it was going to cost like 16.7 million for the whole thing. And the city was going to go in on it. The county was going to go in on it. OSU was going to go in on it. Share the cost. Everybody take their share of it. OSU went a different direction. They've got their own system on campus, which, by the way, means that their radios will not work with the city's radios. So the only way an OSU police officer can communicate with a city of Stillwater police officer is by using their cell phone now.
Okay. Does this change anything for dispatch? I mean, on that end of it?
They are going to have to change out their dispatch equipment as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're going to have to change out a bunch of stuff. That's why this is so expensive, because they're changing out the towers. They're changing out all the infrastructure associated with it. This is not just buying new radios. Mm-hmm. I mean, when we're talking within the last 5-10 years, I think, they upgraded their radios. A lot of people went from, like the analog to the digital stuff. And so they've had some upgrades like that. And those are like a couple $100,000 by the time you buy all the stuff you need for everybody. But this is going to be like basically next generation, I guess. But by the city biting the bullet and taking this big hit to its budget, they're setting it up so that all these other entities can come on board and add on to it later. The county, Sheriff Joe Harper, I talked to him, and he is still looking at trying to get this county-wide for the rest of the rural areas. And that would still cost about $10 million. If they ask the little communities to chip in for their own hardware, like their own radios and stuff like that, that could bring the price tag down a little bit. Of course, right now there's ARPA funding, there's all that federal funding coming in. And so that's an opportunity for a lot of these entities to make some upgrades.
Well, could be. I think in your emergency response could probably be funded through ARPA. I think that's one of the things, communications, different things.
Yeah, absolutely.
That are allowed under that.
Absolutely. And there are a lot of dead spots in the county. And the county also uses an LTE system, which is a cell phone based system. And there are dead spots in the county where you just can't get cell phone service. Like if you're driving from here to Yale, there are spots on Highway 51 where you will not have signal.
Yeah,
So-
I ran into that last year when that vehicle was found in the Cimarron River. I was like switching between channels on my car radio, and it was like car scanner, I guess. But yeah, it was like very difficult.
Yeah. So, I mean, it would help address that too. And when you're looking on the county side of it, you've got 2 to 3 deputies covering all of Payne County, and they're spread out around the county. And if you're out there by yourself and you get in a bad spot or you need some help and your radio's not working, well, now you've got to call. You've got to use your cell phone to call somebody and hope you can reach them and hope that they can get there in time. So it just, you're having to take more time to reach someone. And I asked Joe if he'd ever had any of his personnel get in a bad spot because they weren't able to communicate with someone. And he said, yeah. He said before his time, there was a deputy who basically got in a fight with a guy who had, he said, an AR-15. And his radio was not working. And so he was somewhere where his radio wouldn't work. And so luckily he had been talking on his cell phone with what he called his partner, but it was the other deputy who was on duty. And that was the last call he'd made. So he just basically, it came right up and he redialed it and was able to reach him pretty quickly. But, if he would have had to like punch that number in or pull up the contact or do whatever, okay, that's a couple seconds where things can go really, really bad.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, communication is really vital. And this is going to cover fire. It's going to cover police. It's going to cover emergency management. And it's going to cover the emergency response at Stillwater Regional Airport. So they'll get a lot of bang for it. It'll be next generation. It'll be kind of it'll be a big leap forward. And I think it'll maybe be a model for kind of like other municipalities. But, it's not going to be cheap.
Wasn't there something also that compatibility with like some other state OH, like highway patrol or something like that?
That's a big thing too. It allows them to access this system that's used by other agencies around the state.
Yeah, so it's not just radios; it's this whole system. There's
Exactly.
I think it was in your article where it mentioned like they got to put up a new antenna on a certain building.
Oh, well, no, what they're doing...
What was that?
Well, no, actually, Rob was saying that there is they may have to make some changes as well. Rob Hill, the Stillwater Emergency Management Director, was saying that to fully address the dead spots, we may have to make some changes to our building code.
That's right.
And do what they call bi-directional amplifiers. And basically what that's like
Of course.
Yeah. What that is, it's like it's a signal booster that you build into, if you have one of these buildings that causes problems with radio signals, you go ahead and you build a signal booster into it. And this is becoming part of the building code around the country. I found quite a few places that are at least discussing it or have already adopted it. So if you've got one of those big metal clear span buildings, if you've got a building that's, where everything's made out of concrete, interestingly enough, if you have a bunch of low E windows, that'll interfere with your radio signal and you might need a signal booster. So anyway, it may require more planning, and it may require more action by the city council to really address all the dead spots and be sure that everybody who's responding to emergencies can get help when they need it and can communicate with everybody when they need it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Liz,
will we
yeah.
need to get upgraded police scanners and stuff like that for us, or is it all going to be on the same digital scanners?
That I do not know.
Interesting.
So it's going to take 9 to 12 months to get everything installed. So we'll have some time to learn, what else we need to do.
Interesting.
Yeah. But anyway, a lot of money, but apparently a lot of benefit. There were problems that are actually kind of scary that we've been having for a long time that I think we all just learned about.
Mm-hmm.
Ashlynd got to do something that I've rarely seen this kind of interview. A lot of times we look at things from just very sort of, pulled back, 1,000 feet in the air kind of thing, where you're looking at data and stats. But you actually got to talk to this kid who had sort of been living in a sort of non-traditional home environment.
Yes.
I mean, and the school would call him homeless. He doesn't think of himself that way. He's got a roof over his head. And that difference was also a big, part of the reporting, wasn't it? Some of the stuff you looked into.
Yeah, that was the interesting part is when I started looking into youth homelessness, I didn't necessarily know that it meant that they were not living on the streets. So the McKinney-Vento grant has a clear definition of what a student would be considered as homeless if they live in a non-traditional home, if they're couch surfing with friends, if they live in a shelter, cars, things like that. But when you hear homeless youth, a lot of people on social media, they automatically thought the kids were living on the streets. And so when they opened up the article, they realized, oh, they're just living in non-traditional housing. And a lot of people were actually very receptive online and congratulated Boyd for his achievements. And I really liked that.
This was a bad one to just not read the article, right?
Yeah,
to not read before you comment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, some of the people that did comment before they read, someone would comment, hey, this is what it says in the article. And then they would read the article and they're like, oh my gosh, Boyd is doing such a good job for himself. But yeah, it was a unique interview, one that I've never done before. Boyd is very, very smart. That's one thing I did learn. He's very intelligent. I spoke with his mom, and that was one thing she said too. But I kind of just asked him like, hey, what is your story? And in the beginning, he was very reluctant to talk about his struggles. He kind of sugarcoated everything. And then he paused and he's like, well, that's not exactly how it happened. And I was like, you can say anything. Just because what we talk about doesn't mean it's all going to be printed, and it wasn't all printed. But I tried to showcase that he did have struggles, but he's coming out and making something of himself. So.
Mm-hmm. And some of those struggles were not necessarily sounded like more of him realizing he needed to get himself in a different environment and living on his own in an RV was a better environment for him.
Yeah, he was, when he moved out from his dad's in California, he was couch surfing with a friend for a few years, and he said, I just felt stagnant. So he moved back to Oklahoma with his mom and his sister. But for circumstances outside of his control, he decided to live with his sister and not his mom. Well, his sister felt kind of trapped, I guess. So she moved back to California and he was on his own again. And so he lived in that house alone for a bit that he shared with his sister, and he realized, I need to get out of this environment. That it's not a good living condition. And so he bought the RV and he said he pulled it up and he's been living there ever since.
The thing that I got from the story was, this kid, for being a kid, for being a teenager, seems to have a really strong self-awareness.
Yes.
And obviously very independent. And he's making decisions, and he's trying to make the best decisions he can, given the situations that he is faced with as a young person with very limited resources.
Yes.
And that's one thing he really comes across as very self-aware and very resourceful.
Yeah, and there was a lot of things I had to leave out for space, but one thing that he mentioned is he did lose a lot of his childhood, and he said right now he's not necessarily trying to get his childhood back, but he's trying to remember the good things of being a kid and go back through his childhood and enjoy those things. So that was another thing, is he said he missed out on a lot in his childhood, and so he's now, I think, 18 or 19, and he's trying to slowly remember the good things about being a kid, the excitement about life, not knowing everything, not knowing reality. And he's been hit hard with reality since 15, 16 years old.
What I would want readers to take away is, he's fiercely independent, and a lot of things he does by choice, but he's also just one young man, just one story. His situation's very unique to himself, so it may or may not represent the hundreds of other kids out there. I would hope the readers would take away that this is just one person's story.
There's over 200 students.
He's not representative of everyone. He's doing his own thing, but yes, there are problems far larger than even what he has going on, and I think he would probably say that too. Like, in some cases he might see himself as fortunate than
and there was another student I was going to talk to from Lincoln Academy as well, but I was never able to get in touch with her. But there's several students out there. Some are even living in vehicles with their parents. So this isn't just, yes, he's doing a great job for himself, but he's not the only one, and he doesn't represent everyone.
There are kids who, everybody's story is different, and there are kids who have a whole different set of struggles. I've talked about this before, maybe even on the podcast, but I did some volunteer work at Lincoln Academy, which is our local alternative high school, years ago. And one of the things I found was that a lot of times the kids are there because they, maybe they had truancy issues, they had trouble making it to school, they had trouble doing well in the traditional high school setting. And what I found was, a lot of times people think, oh, these are bad kids, they're not motivated, they're not whatever, they're in trouble. Well, a lot of times the reason they couldn't focus on being what we expect your regular teenager to be and doing normal high school was because they were carrying this crushing load of adult responsibility, or their life was in chaos through no fault of their own. And so, there are so many different stories. And yes, Boyd is... he comes across as sort of, very resilient and almost like people are like, oh, good job, good for you. But there are a lot of kids that are, on the verge of going under, that are barely hanging on.
Yes.
So still a problem, still something that we need to be aware of. And definitely these kids need help. They're not equipped to do this. It would be tough for an adult to handle some of these situations.
And it does travel into their adult life once they do get more of adult age, because if you're homeless as a youth and you're not equipped with all the tools to succeed and to get housing and know how to do all that, what's going to happen when you age out of high school and college? You're still going to be on the streets because you don't have the tools and the resources. And that was one of the big things, is the cost of living in Stillwater is so high. Even for low income families, they have to come up with all the deposits and all of that. And if they have evictions, they cannot get into low income housing, or Section 8 housing is, I guess, what it would be called. But it's very difficult to find housing for low income people if they have any criminal history, evictions, anything like that, which in turn they are living in cars with their kids. And we do have several families. I don't know the exact number of families, but I was told several.
Yeah.
Well, that's not your final reporting either, right?
No, I went on vacation last
week.
week, so I only did Boyd's story, but I do plan on doing some more on the education, because I did speak with people from Lincoln Academy and from Stillwater Public Schools, and I am going to still try to get in touch with more students if they are available.
Okay, we look forward to it.
Yeah.
And I think that probably does it for this week.
Yeah, so this will be the last one before Christmas. Merry Christmas, you guys.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Ho, ho, ho.
All right. Thank you for joining us in the newsroom.
Howdy, folks. Just want to remind you that you can get your free Studio Stillwater sticker by going to studiostillwater.net. Click on the link at the top of the page and fill out the information, and we will send you your free sticker. This podcast is made possible with support from the Stillwater News Press. Please consider subscribing to our award-winning newspaper and help support local journalism. Go to stwnewspress.com to sign up. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.